What if I told you the worst day of your life, the day that broke you, crushed you, or made you feel like you couldn't breathe, could actually be the very thing that fuels your greatest purpose? Stay with me, because once you see this, you'll never look at pain the same way again. There's a day in every person's life they wish never happened. Maybe it was the day you lost someone you loved, the day you failed so badly you wanted to disappear, the day your trust was shattered and your heart ripped apart. That day felt like an ending, but I'm here to tell you what you thought was the end was actually the beginning. If you walk away right now, you'll keep carrying that pain, but if you stay until the end of this, I promise you'll discover how to transform that pain into unstoppable fuel that will drive your destiny. Every single one of us has lived through a moment where we thought life had completely collapsed. Maybe it was a relationship you poured your entire heart into only to see it fall apart in front of your eyes. Maybe it was the day you lost a job you thought defined your future. Maybe it was that doctor's call or that rejection letter or that one betrayal that cut so deep you couldn't breathe. On those days, pain feels permanent. You replay the moment again and again in your head, asking questions that never seem to give answers. Why me? Why did this happen? What did I do to deserve this? And when you're locked in those questions, the pain grows heavier, the wound gets deeper, and the meaning you attach to that day begins to define your entire life. But here's the truth most people never hear. It's not the event itself that defines you. It's the meaning you attach to it. The same event that one person allows to destroy them is the exact event another person uses as a foundation to build a new life. The difference is meaning. Think about two people who go through the same devastating event, losing a business. One person loses everything, and in that loss, they say, "This proves I'm a failure. I can't trust myself anymore. Life is against me." That meaning creates despair, paralysis, hopelessness. They retreat, they give up, and they shrink. Now, picture another person who loses their business on the exact same day. The facts are identical. Money gone, dreams shattered, identity questioned. But instead of saying, "I'm a failure," they shift the meaning. They say, "This isn't the end. This is my wake-up call. This is life forcing me to grow, forcing me to innovate, forcing me to rebuild stronger." That meaning creates hunger. It builds resilience. It turns devastation into determination. Same event, but two completely different lives emerge because of the meaning chosen. Let me take you deeper with an example that may sound familiar. Imagine a child growing up in a house where their father abandons them. For one person, that memory becomes the story of their life. They say, my father left me, so I'm not worthy of love. I'll never be good enough. And they carry that belief into every relationship, sabotaging themselves before anyone else can. Their entire life becomes a reflection of the meaning they attach to that one painful event. But another person with the same experience, the same pain, the same abandonment can choose a radically different meaning. They can say, "My father left me, and that's why I will never leave my own children. That's why I will show up in ways he never did. That's why I will become the kind of person who breaks the cycle." Do you see the difference? The event didn't change. The pain didn't vanish, but the meaning transformed the pain into a mission. Here's the core principle. Pain by itself doesn't shape your destiny. Your interpretation of it does. You can't always control what happens to you, but you always control the meaning you give it. And that meaning is the difference between living in a prison and living with purpose. People often say time heals all wounds, but that's not true. Time doesn't heal. Time only gives you space to choose a meaning. If you choose a meaning that keeps you chained to your pain, years can go by and you'll still be living in the past, still trapped by the same story. But if you choose a meaning that empowers you, the wound becomes wisdom, the scar becomes strength, and the worst day of your life becomes the day you started building the best version of yourself. What most people don't realize is that meaning is never neutral. Every time something painful happens, your mind instantly goes to work trying to answer the question, what does this mean? If you don't consciously choose an empowering answer, your emotions will choose for you. And emotions under pressure rarely tell the truth. They exaggerate, they distort, they whisper lies like, "You're not enough," or "You'll never recover." That's why you have to step in and consciously shift the meaning. Because the moment you do, everything changes. The weight on your chest lightens. The impossible feels survivable. The wound starts to become a source of energy instead of exhaustion. There's a story of a man who lost his eyesight in his early 20s. He could have chosen the meaning, my life is over, I'm broken, I'll never experience joy again. And for a while, that's exactly what he believed. But eventually he made a decision to attach a new meaning to his pain. He decided, if I can't see the world with my eyes, I'll see it with my spirit. I'll hear it with my ears. I'll feel it with my heart. That shift in meaning turned his disability into an advantage. He learned to play piano by ear, to listen with more depth than most people ever experience, and to connect with others on a profound emotional level. What once felt like the death of his future became the foundation of his purpose. There are moments in life when everything inside of you feels like it's collapsing. The walls close in, your heart races, your breath feels shallow, and the weight of the situation pushes you to the edge. These are breakdown moments. The day your plans fell apart, the day you got the call you never wanted, the day when everything you thought was secure suddenly wasn't. It feels like the ground beneath you is splitting open and you're powerless to stop the fall. And in that moment, the instinct is to run, to numb yourself, to escape the pain. But what if the very breakdown you're trying to run from is actually the exact thing that's preparing you for your breakthrough? What if the pain you're fighting against is the hammer that's shaping you into someone unshakable? The truth is, breakthroughs are almost never born out of comfort. They are born in crisis. They don't come when life is easy. They come when life is so difficult that you're forced to reinvent who you are. Think about it. Every single breakthrough in history and innovation in human resilience has been preceded by some form of breakdown. A person gets sick and suddenly they discover a strength inside themselves they never tapped into before. A business fails, and in the ashes of that failure, an idea emerges that transforms not just their life, but thousands of others. A heart gets broken, and in the wreckage of that heartbreak, someone discovers a deeper self-love and a stronger standard for how they will be treated. The breakdown isn't the end, it's the soil where the breakthrough is planted. Without the pressure, without the collapse, without the storm, there would be no transformation. Let me give you a real-life example that shows this principle in action. Imagine an athlete at the peak of his career. He's trained his whole life, his body is his instrument, his future is laid out before him, and then in one unexpected moment, he suffers a catastrophic injury. Doctors tell him he may never play again, his world crashes down, depression hits, fear creeps in, and his identity feels stripped away. That was his breakdown. For months, he wrestles with anger, with hopelessness, with the question, why me? But then something shifts. Instead of seeing the injury as the end, he begins to see it as an invitation. He starts asking new questions. What can this teach me? How can I use this? How can I come back even stronger? He discovers parts of himself he never accessed before. The discipline to rehab day after day, the patience to rebuild his body step by step, the humility to appreciate every small victory. Eventually, he not only returns to his sport, but becomes an even greater player because of the mental toughness forged in his breakdown. And even if he hadn't returned, the man he became through that process was someone far more powerful than the athlete he was before. This is the essence of turning breakdowns into breakthroughs. They force you to strip away the superficial layers and face the raw version of yourself. When life tears away your illusions, when it burns down the false identities, what's left is the authentic core of who you are. And from that place, real growth begins. People often say they want to change, they want to grow, they want to evolve. But let's be honest, very few people change when life is comfortable. Most people only change when life makes it impossible to stay the same. The divorce, the loss, the failure, the rejection, those are the events that drive transformation because they make comfort no longer an option. Breakdowns are also mirrors. They reveal what's really inside you. When everything is going well, it's easy to look confident, to act strong, to pretend you have it all together. But when the storm comes, the mask gets ripped away and you find out who you really are. You see what beliefs you truly hold, what values you truly live by, what strength you truly possess. And in that discovery lies the breakthrough, because once you know who you are under pressure, you can build a life that's not dependent on appearances, but on authentic power. History is full of examples of people whose greatest breakdowns became the birthplace of their breakthroughs. Thomas Edison failed over 1,000 times before he perfected the light bulb. Each failed attempt could have been labeled a breakdown, a humiliation, a disaster. But instead, he saw every failure as a step closer to success, a necessary collapse before the illumination. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, a breakdown of freedom, of dignity, of life as he knew it. Yet out of that prison came not bitterness, but the breakthrough of forgiveness, reconciliation, and a vision that transformed a nation. Even spiritual traditions across the world teach this principle, that death precedes resurrection, that darkness precedes light, that winter precedes spring. The pattern is universal. The breakdown always carries the seed of the breakthrough. When you are in the middle of a breakdown, you can't always see it. All you feel is the loss, the chaos, the uncertainty. But looking back, you often realize it was the very season that shaped you into who you were meant to be. the heartbreak that made you more compassionate, the failure that gave you the hunger to succeed, the rejection that pushed you toward the path you were really supposed to walk. The breakdown was never the end. It was the breaking of the old you so the new you could emerge. Every single human being is fueled by emotion. It doesn't matter who you are, how disciplined you think you've become, or how much knowledge you've accumulated. At the end of the day, what drives your action is not logic, it's emotion. People don't stay up all night working on their dreams because it makes perfect sense on paper. They do it because they feel passion, they feel hunger, they feel the fire in their chest that says, I have to do this. Emotion is the fuel of all progress, but here's the catch. Most people let their emotions control them instead of using them as energy. When pain hits, when anger rises, when grief takes over, they collapse under the weight of those emotions. They numb themselves, they run from it, or they drown in it. But the people who rise to greatness have discovered something different. They've learned how to take the very emotions that could destroy them and turn them into pure energy to move forward. Think about anger for a moment. Most of us have been taught that anger is destructive, that it ruins relationships, that it leads to mistakes. And yes, uncontrolled anger can burn everything down around you, but controlled, focused anger can also be the most powerful catalyst for change. Some of the greatest revolutions in history were born out of righteous anger, anger at injustice, anger at oppression, anger at being told, this is just the way it is. When that emotion is harnessed, it creates momentum. It makes people stand up when they would have stayed down. It gives them a reason to act when they would have accepted defeat. Anger, when transformed into fuel, can give you the drive to set higher standards for your life and refuse to accept mediocrity. The same is true for grief. Grief can feel like quicksand, pulling you deeper and deeper until you feel like you can't move. But grief is also evidence of love. It's the measure of how deeply someone or something mattered to you. And when you learn to channel grief, it becomes a force of connection and creation. Think of the mother who loses a child in a tragic accident. She could collapse into despair for the rest of her life and no one would blame her. But instead, she decides to use her grief as fuel. She starts a foundation. She advocates for safety laws. She becomes a voice for other families. Her grief doesn't vanish, but it transforms into a purpose that touches lives beyond her own. That's the power of taking emotion and converting it into energy. Even fear, the emotion most people try to avoid at all costs, can be a powerful driver. Fear tells you where your boundaries are. It shows you where growth is waiting. Fear is a signal that you are standing at the edge of something significant, and instead of letting it paralyze you, you can use it to sharpen your focus. Imagine a performer about to walk onto a stage in front of thousands of people. Their heart pounds, their palms sweat, their stomach tightens. They could interpret those sensations as fear and back away, or they could choose to call it excitement. The same adrenaline, the same chemistry, but a different meaning, and suddenly fear becomes fuel. One of the clearest examples of this principle is found in the world of sports. Picture an underdog team in a championship game. They've been underestimated, overlooked, and mocked all season. That disrespect fuels them. Every insult, every dismissal, every headline that wrote them off becomes energy. They step onto the field not just with skill, but with emotion turned into fire, and that fire propels them to play beyond their limits. The emotion that could have broken their confidence becomes the very thing that drives their victory. Here's what you need to understand. Emotions are raw power. They are neutral until you give them direction. Energy by itself doesn't care whether it's used to build or destroy. Fire can burn a house down or heat a home. Electricity can power a hospital or electrocute someone. The deciding factor is how you channel it. In the same way, anger can ruin your life or it can reshape it. Grief can consume you or it can deepen you. Fear can lock you in place or it can launch you into action. The key is never to suppress emotion, because what you suppress gets stronger in the shadows. The key is to face it, feel it fully, and then give it a purpose. That's why some of the most successful people you'll ever meet have the most painful backstories. They didn't erase their pain. They didn't deny their emotion. They redirected it. They turned the rage of rejection into the determination to succeed. They turned the heartbreak of loss into the passion to help others. They turned the fear of failure into the drive to prepare harder, to push further, to demand more of themselves. They didn't wait for perfect conditions. They didn't wait for their emotions to disappear. They used what they had and they turned it into fuel. One of the greatest traps human beings fall into is the endless replay of the past. The mind replays the scene like a movie stuck on loop. The betrayal, the rejection, the mistake, the failure. You lie awake at night reliving conversations that already ended, imagining different outcomes, rewriting moments in your head that you can never rewrite in reality. And the more you replay it, the deeper the groove in your mind becomes, until your past isn't just behind you anymore, it's living inside you. The truth is, the past is a place of reference, not a place of residence. It's meant to teach you, not to trap you. Yet so many people spend their lives walking backward, eyes fixed on what was instead of what could be. They live as prisoners of memories, dragging yesterday's chains into today's opportunities, never realizing that every time they focus on what they cannot change, they are sacrificing the future they still have the power to create. The reason people stay locked in the past is simple. Pain is sticky. The mind hates unfinished business. And when an event wounds us, our brain keeps bringing it back like a notification that won't stop flashing. Remember this. Think about this. Obsess over this. But focusing on the past doesn't heal it. It only enlarges it. You cannot drive a car by staring in the rearview mirror. You cannot climb a mountain by looking at the ground behind you. And you cannot step into a powerful future if all your energy is tied up in yesterday's regrets. At some point, you have to decide that your future deserves more attention than your past, that the vision ahead of you is greater than the pain behind you. Think about someone who loses their job unexpectedly. The shock, the fear, the embarrassment, it all hits at once. Many people spend months, even years, replaying the moment they got called into the office, hearing the boss's words in their head, feeling the humiliation over and over again. They stay stuck in anger, asking, why did this happen? What could I have done differently? And while they're looking backward, the opportunities in front of them pass by unnoticed. But another person in the same situation decides to shift their focus. Instead of replaying the meeting where it ended, they start imagining the possibilities of what could begin. They update their skills, network with new people, apply for roles they would have never considered before. The difference isn't that one person had more talent or luck. It's that one was living backward while the other chose to live forward. Sports offer another vivid example. Picture a basketball player who misses the game-winning shot. Cameras capture it, fans criticize it, the mistake plays on highlight reels. If that player obsesses over the miss, relives it in his head every time he picks up the ball, he becomes paralyzed. His confidence shrinks, his performance declines, and the past failure defines his future games. But the great players handle it differently. They review the miss once, extract the lesson, and then shift their eyes forward. The next practice, the next game, the next opportunity becomes their focus. That ability to release the past quickly and focus forward is what separates the good from the legendary. Even in relationships, the principle holds true. Imagine someone who went through a painful breakup. They replay the last fight, the hurtful words, the moment of goodbye. Months later, they're still scrolling through old photos, still reliving the past instead of stepping into new possibilities. Their heart is chained to a chapter that has already closed. But when they finally decide to stop rereading old pages and start writing new ones, everything shifts. They stop asking, why did it end? And start asking, what's waiting for me next? That forward focus allows them to heal, to grow, and eventually to love again. Here's the key. Your brain will always find evidence for whatever direction you give it. If you look backward, it will feed you memories, regrets, and doubts. If you look forward, it will give you visions, possibilities, and strategies. The energy of your life flows to where your focus goes. That's why leaders, creators, and high achievers discipline themselves to focus forward. They don't deny the past. They extract the lesson. They honor the experience, and then they set their eyes on the horizon. They know that you cannot change what happened, but you can absolutely shape what happens next. History is filled with stories of individuals who refuse to let their past dictate their future. Abraham Lincoln lost elections, failed in business, and endured personal tragedies, but he didn't stay trapped in those moments. Each setback became a lesson, and each lesson fueled his forward motion until he became one of the most impactful leaders in history. Oprah Winfrey endured abuse and poverty in her childhood, but she refused to let those chapters become her prison. She focused forward, building a future so powerful that her past could no longer define her. The common thread is simple. When you focus forward, your future expands. When you focus backward, your future shrinks. The discipline of focusing forward doesn't mean forgetting your past. It means refusing to live there. It means saying, that chapter taught me what I needed to learn, but now I'm turning the page. It means using the past as raw material for growth while refusing to let it become the script of your future. And every time you catch yourself drifting into old memories, you bring your eyes back to the horizon and remind yourself, the story isn't over, the best chapters haven't been written yet, and the only direction worth walking is forward.